And in three, two, one. Hello, and welcome to Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente, and I'm joined by the Libra icon. What's going on, Dwayne?
Not much. Great weekend of basketball, and now we're getting into the playoffs. Let's get at it.
All right, man. Just a reminder, you're listening to Know the Score. Know the Score can be found on CSPN.us. You can also find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitch Radio, and Google Play. You can follow the show's Twitter account at KTS Pod. You can follow Dwayne at the Libra Icon. And you can follow my Twitter account at Don Delarente. So, Dwayne, we had the Final Fours this weekend. We had the men's and the women's Final Four. So, we're going to give a little love to the ladies to start out, as we had the first matchup featured Mississippi State flexing its muscle against Louisville in overtime to win 73 to 63. Tierra McCowan had 21 points and 25 rebounds.
Whew.
Yeah, that was a really good effort in a game that was basically Mississippi State went on like a 13-3 run in overtime to pull away. But it was a really close game, nip and tuck the whole way, really high
Right.
level. And then in the featured game of the Final Four for the women, Notre Dame shocks UConn on a jumper with 1 second left by, give me some help here, Dwayne.
Arike Ogumbawale.
Arike Ogumbawale to advance to the national championship game 91 to 89. Second year in a row that UConn gets stunned at the Final Four. Last year they had the perfect record. They had the over 100 game winning streak
111.
snapped. Yeah, at this particular level. And this year they were the odds-on favorite to win again. But Notre Dame had other plans, and so advancing to the championship game, we had Mississippi State and Notre Dame on the women's side. Any thoughts about that Notre Dame UConn thriller?
Well, it was a very close game. I know Gino Oriema, he did say out of the four teams that were in the Final Four, or the three opponents in the Final Four, the team he did not want to see was Notre Dame because Notre Dame and UConn had that familiarity. They used to play at least four times a year in most cases. I mean, you had the two Big East meetings, you had the Big East tournament final most likely, and they would always meet in tournaments. So um, familiarity breeds contempt, and so when Notre Dame had a shot at UConn, they put their best shot in. Marika Ogunbowale, she had a monster game, and the confidence she had in that jumper. She even said at Mamba Mentality, she channeled her inner Kobe and took out the Mighty Huskies. And I think that's the thing with UConn. They've blown people out so many times that these elite teams that they do get to see in the national semifinals, they're always trying to elevate their game to UConn's level. And when UConn has a tight game, they don't really know how to react because they've blown people out so many times. Like this was a team that put up 140 in the first round, so it's really hard for them to adjust. I mean, from an 88-point victory in the first round to having to go to overtime, and they need those close games a lot more. But it just shows that other teams are finally trying to catch up to them.
Right, right. So we're going to shift over to the men's Final Four. And in the first game, Michigan, they advanced to the national championship game by using another strong defensive effort in the second half to end the Cinderella story of Loyola Chicago 69 to 57. Second half of just lockdown defense from about the 11-minute mark to about
Mhm.
the 6 or 5 minute mark there in the second half. Loyola Chicago was stuck on 49, and Michigan
Mhm.
found their groove. They started hitting some outside shots, getting some drives to the basket. Wagner started, flexing his muscle a little bit, and Michigan pulled away on the strength of their defense, just like they did against Florida State. Loyola Chicago, they just weren't, making any shots. They were trying to work through their big men, but their big man got in foul trouble there in the middle of the second half, and so that kind of, disrupted their offense a little bit. Your takes on what you saw from, what Michigan did in that second half to take a deficit and turn it into a 12-point win?
You pretty summed it up with the defense in the second half. It looked like Loyola Chicago was going to get off to another great start, and they were looking pretty good. And then Wagner and the defense of Michigan, they really came through and they put on a great showing. And now they have the victory and the berth to the Final Four. But you can't take away anything from Loyola Chicago, despite the clock striking midnight and the carrots turning back into a pumpkin, and um, the the slipper was left behind, and you know it just shows that the 11th seed still has a lot of work to do when it gets to the national semifinals. They're now 0-4 in the national semis, but it was a great run. I enjoyed it, and good heads off to Michigan for their defensive display.
Right. And then we move to the second game, where we had Villanova dismantle Kansas 95-79 to advance to their second national title game in 3 years. Villanova set a record in this game with 18 made threes. I was at work. I had this game up on the screen. So I'm out, looking at the hockey game out in front of me. And then I turn around, and we haven't even got to like the first TV timeout. Maybe we're coming up on it, and it's 16-4. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then they flashed a stat that, they're like, 4 for 4 for 3-point land and like 2 for 3 from the field. And it's like, oh my goodness, what am I about to watch? And it turned out to be 18 3-pointers. Oh my goodness. This was a shooting display that we've never seen in the tournament before, because usually in the Final Four, when they get to these bigger venues, the shooting angles, and the backdrops make it where the shooting is just awful, especially from 3-point land. This was not the case for Villanova. So, Dwayne, I know you'll have much more to say because your beloved Jayhawks were in this game. I know you were very excited about the possibilities of what could be. But I just talk about, what went wrong for your guys when they went up against Villanova on Saturday night.
Well, for the record, anybody that would have went up against Villanova that night or in the tournament would have just had no chance. I mean, once Villanova spread Kansas out and we're hitting the threes, they just could not miss. And it's not even the fact that the Jayhawks had a bad game plan. They were scoring, but they were scoring 2-pointers and getting in the paint and using their big men and using their dribble drives. They weren't shooting the three as much. I mean, at one point, Kansas had no 3-point attempts, and Villanova had about 15. And trading 2-point baskets for 3-point long shots is not going to cut it. So it was a rough day, but at the end of the day, there was a perfect storm for Villanova, and Kansas was just on the wrong side of it. The better team won on this day. I mean, you thought the 3-point shooting would cool off in the second half, but I mean, they took less shots, but the shots that they did take continued to drop, which led to 18 3-pointers. And Kansas did what they could, try to get back in the game, but it was just too much. The machine that is Villanova was just too much. So hats off to them. Hats off to the Jayhawks. This was a team that was supposed to have been knocked out in the first round by 16. We did get that. It wasn't them. This was a team that wasn't supposed to win the Big 12, but they did. a team that wasn't supposed to win the Big 12 tournament, but they did. And they weren't supposed to get to the Final Four. Everybody had Duke go to the Final Four, and they beat Duke. So this was a great season. You know, they got over that Elite Eight hump, and I can be more proud. So hats off to Villanova. Better team won, and that's that.
All right. So we turn our attention to the women's national title game. And Notre Dame wins the national championship on a buzzer beater 61-58 for their second title in program history. And give me the name one more time, Dwayne.
Arike Ogunbowale.
Proved lightning can strike twice as she nails a three-pointer at the buzzer to win it. She's named the most outstanding player of the Final Four. And Notre Dame brings it home for the ACC. And this will definitely be a tournament that everybody will remember Ogunbowale for, her last-second shot making, under pressure in the clutch. She produced a diamond twice.
Indeed. And not only that, if you look at the whole weekend of the women's Final Four was very, very entertaining. More entertaining than the men's Final Four. I can definitely say that. And, these women went out and proved themselves, especially against one of the best teams in the land. I mean, the team to beat. I mean, we always joke how it's the UConn Invitational where 63 teams fight for the right to lose to UConn, but the last 2 years, UConn's been out in the national semis, and I thought Mississippi State, they were in control most of the game. They held Notre Dame to 3 points in the second quarter. They got the lead out to 15, and even at the 154 mark in the game, they were up by 5, and they had a 95% chance of winning this game. Mississippi State did, but the fact that Ogunbowale and company, they did not quit. Jessica Shepard had 19 to lead the way as well. And the main thing I thought was in this game where Notre Dame had a chance to, Mississippi State had a chance to foul because they had a foul to give. And instead of getting that foul to give, they let the shot go off. And if you look at the replays and you look at the defense, you couldn't play that shot you couldn't have played any better defense. The hand was in the face, guarded closely. It was off balance, and the shot was just beautiful. So hats off to Notre Dame, first championship since 2001. And like you said, brings it home for the ACC.
Yep. So congratulations to Notre Dame women's basketball as they are the 2018 national champions. Then we shift over to the men's game, and Villanova continued their hot shooting as they defeated Michigan 79-62. Villanova got 31 points off the bench from Dante Vicencio, and they win their second title in 3 years. Villanova became the first team to lead the NCAA in scoring to win the title since North Carolina in 2005. Villanova was also the first team since the 2009 UNC squad to win every game in the tournament by double digits. So they set a record for threes made at a Final Four. Like I said, second title in 3 years. And Jay Wright, he's the king. The only guy that probably be as prolific as him in the tournament in the last few years has been Roy Williams. And, Jay Wright beat Roy Williams a couple of years ago to get the title on the last second shot by Chris Dunn. And then, they got ousted by NC State last year, but then they came back this year and they flexed and got it done again. So, shout out to Villanova and Jay Wright. He's really turning the Big East. They're not a Power 5 conference, but they've got to the last 3 national championships. So, he's got something rocking over there. So just talk about Villanova, crowning themselves the kings.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you said, everything, the Big East won again. And keep in mind, this is a team that didn't even win the Big East regular season title. That went to Xavier, and they cruised through the Big East tournament, cruised through the NCAA tournament. 3-point shooting was their key. DiVincenzo was a lightning rod in this game, and getting the most outstanding player for a guy that came off the bench. And Jalen Brunson showed why he was National Player of the Year. There were a couple push-offs he got away with, but when you win awards, you get that star treatment. So, but aside from that, it was a real good victory for Villanova. Philadelphia wins again, and it's really interesting now. A lot of people don't call Villanova Philadelphia, but with the way they play in the Wells Fargo Center. They part of the Philadelphia Big Five in the City Six, and they are the kings of Philadelphia, kings of college basketball. 67 teams are going to lose in this tournament, and only one will stand tall. And that was the Wildcats.
Yeah, you have to give Jay Wright a lot of credit. I mean, he's been embracing the small ball for probably about maybe 7-8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And, back to like when they had Kyle Lowry as point guard and they were running that kind of 3-guard offense back then. He's been one of the, first college coaches to kind of go with this more 3-point heavy type of offense and kind of having, your stretch fours and big men who can, open up the lane and kind of leave the lane open. And that's the very reason that they defeated North Carolina is Roy Williams was late to kind of go to a smaller lineup because Roy Williams is a traditional old school coach. He likes to have those two big guys in there. But with the way Villanova was playing, leaving the lane open, their power forwards were able to drive and work our bigger men once they got them into the paint because they drove them from 15, 19 feet out, make them move their feet. And then once they got them into the paint, they were, they really couldn't do anything because they're not used to defending so far out. Right. So that's kind of the strategy that he's used the last couple of years. And, it's produced 2 national titles. And, he's got like one of the highest winning percentages here lately in the tournament. So, you just have to give him his credit. He's definitely one of the top, 5 coaches in college basketball right now.
Absolutely.
And, he's with, Coach K not having the tournament success with these one and done kids. He may actually be, creeping up a little bit higher than that, because
right.
Cal and Coach K have kind of, had kind of mixed bag with these, ultra, recruiting classes as Vegas has Duke favored again based off their, incoming class. Yeah. Right. But, Coach K really hasn't had a lot of success in the tournament lately. So right. We'll kind of see how that plays out. North Carolina not being, rumored to get on probation now is going to allow Roy Williams to elevate the type of kids that he's recruiting. So, I look for them to be more of a major player in the next couple of years in recruiting as, incoming freshman. Nasir Little was the MVP of the recently played McDonald's All-Star game. So, that just tells you the type of level that, North Carolina is getting back to recruiting. So,
right. And also if you add Kansas too, you got the Lawson brothers. And Kansas is they're not doing the one and done. They're going the transfer route because they got the Lawson brothers coming in from Memphis. They got a few good players coming in. Devin Dotson, Quentin Grimes. And then you also got to wonder if Malik Newman, if he's going to go pro or not, because he had a great postseason. And we'll just have to wait and see. But I think my top 3 at the moment right now are Duke, Villanova, and Kansas. And I wish we were playing Duke next year in the Champions Classic, but it's going to be Kansas and Michigan State. And then also Kansas and Villanova are going to be playing in the home and home series starting next season. So that should be fun.
Yeah, that'll definitely be something to look forward to. Again, an early college basketball season is a lot of fun because you get these marquee matchups where the big dogs will face each other because it's early enough in the season where they can recover and make sure things look right at the end of the season. And plus, it helps your resume now because like I think next year the ACC is going to go to their round robin where everybody's
Mm,
going to play each other home and home. No more of this, Virginia plays Carolina one year at Carolina and plays them next year at Virginia. They're going to go, back to the round robin schedule. So these marquee matchups are definitely going to start getting limited because, the coaches don't want to suffer too many losses.
right.
Because now, where you would, normally just play Wake Forest at home this year, and now you got to worry about going to play them at their place, and they're a little bit tougher there. So, things like that tend to, get in coaches' heads, and they don't want to schedule the games against the Kentuckys, the Michigans, or the Dukes, or the out of conference games that they know are 50-50.
Right. And and my whole thing is, I think it's good for the ACC to kind of get out of that round robin system. Or I mean, with so many teams, you also want to.
No, they're
If
going back to it. No, they've been out of it for since they had the expansion, but next year they're going back to it. So everybody gets a double double because for the last couple of years it's kind
that's
of like Virginia would come to Carolina and then Carolina would go to Virginia the next year, where it wasn't the well we're gonna if we lose to you in January we're gonna see you again next month at our place, but they're going back to that.
I wonder how that's going to work though, because there's so many teams.
Yeah, they're going to cut down the the number of games that they're going to play on the they're going to still have the number of games, but what's going to happen is instead of playing usually Carolina will play a Michigan or they'll play outside of the Big Ten ACC challenge, the things that they're locked into that they can't get out of, they're just going to
Yeah,
play the Woffords and the Charlestons and the you know lesser schools to make sure that they get to their 22, 23, 24 wins.
that's a lot of conference games.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun because that's what always made the ACC so fun was because when they had the 9 teams originally, everybody could play each other comfortably and still you could, play in your tournaments and have your outside marquee games and that fit within the schedule good. But yeah,
Yeah,
now that they've added like 9 more teams, we'll see how things work out. But yeah, just a fun year in college basketball. Of course, everybody lives for the one shining moment at the end of the tournament to culminate, all of the happenings and relive all the buzzer beaters and the goodwill moments and the heartfelt moments. So congrats to Villanova. And like I said before, congrats to Notre Dame as they are the champions of college basketball. This is Know the Score. I'm your host, Don Delarente. I'm joined by my co-host, the Libra icon, Dwayne. And we're going to shift into a little bit of that MLB, Major League Baseball, as we had opening day this past Thursday. What I loved about this year's MLB opening day was it was a true opening day. All 30 teams started on the same day. There was none of this Sunday night game and then wait 4 days for the, real season to start up what everybody else plays. No, everybody was out on the field on Thursday. So, we had day games all over the country. That's truly the best way to take in a baseball game. And the biggest face and the newest face in the biggest place was Giancarlo Stanton. And he did not disappoint as he hit 2 home runs up in Toronto in his first game as a New York Yankee, the first New York Yankee to have 2 home runs in his debut since Roger Maris in 1960. So, Dwayne,
boo.
Giancarlo Stanton, producer, man, right off the gate. People are expecting big things between him and Aaron Judge hitting back to back. They have a real chance to threaten the record for most home runs between teammates, which I think is like 111, set by
Yeah,
Mantle and
I think
Maris.
so.
And
Mhm.
so they've got a really good chance to do it.
Yeah, it's really good for the Yankees. I think this is kind of, as you could just tell, I'm so thrilled talking about the Yankees. But yeah, it's gonna be a very good season. I mean, they literally have Murderers Row Part Two again. I mean, with Stanton, Judge, and Sanchez, and if they can just get the bullpen and everything straight, they will be probably one of the dominant forces in the American League once again. So we shall see how that goes as we go through this long stretch of baseball.
It's funny, man. Just think, like 3 years ago, everybody was retiring. A Rod was trying to get his money, hanging on, quote unquote, holding guys back. Then they went into this, they finally got rid of A Rod, got him out of the way. Then they decided, okay, we're just going to, go young and bring our guys up out of our farm system. And then one playoff and one off season, and bam, they're right back to where they've always been. In the mix, favorite to win it all.
When people thought that
maybe it was going to be like a 3 or 4 year, regrouping stage for the Yankees. Nope.
I was one of those hoping it would have been, but it's not.
So we're going to shift over and talk about the defending World Series champions, the Houston Astros. Shout out to In the Bleachers, Mr. Michael Felder, his favorite baseball team, as they're looking to repeat, and they're off to a strong start. There's no World Series hangover for these guys. They swept Texas right off the break. They had great pitching. They won last night. Charlie Morton with a great pitching effort. So, Houston looking as strong as they, were at the end of last season. And in the opposite end of the things, the Dodgers are struggling here a little bit. They haven't really scored a lot of runs. They got shut out twice by the San Francisco Giants. So just talk about,
your Giants.
Yeah, there you go. Talk about the, the two starts that the two World Series teams have gotten off to this year where, Houston's, just like they're still in World Series mode, and the Dodgers are suffering a little bit of a hangover.
Well, I mean, it was World Series mode, and because they still have the core guys for this Astros team, and that core is going to be together for a long time, and the Astros are going to be a major player for a long time. So it doesn't surprise me that they are off to such a great start. The Dodgers, I mean, if this was an odd year, then the Dodgers would be off to a better start. But this is an even year, and we know that ever since 2010, the San Francisco Giants have been major players in every even year. So it's the even year Giants, and they just have been playing very well. And the Dodgers, I mean, they lost a lot of personnel. They still have a pretty good lineup, and way too early. Let's not overreact. They'll be fine.
Yeah, Justin Turner starting the year on the DL is really, a big blow to their lineup. He's really the guy who, drives in all the runs and the real energy. And then, that causes Puig to have to kind of move up into a spot that he's really not suited for yet because he doesn't have quite the discipline that Turner has to hit in that 4 spot. So, right now they're, suffering from a little some injuries and things. And it was just, real weird to see Clayton Kershaw pitch so well, but, they couldn't score for him the other day, and the Dodgers won. Right. Dodgers lost 1-0 to the Giants. So we'll also stick in LA, and we'll talk about the Angels as Sho Ohtani, a.k.a. the Japanese Babe Ruth. He won his MLB pitching debut. He gave up 3 hits with 6 strikeouts over 6 innings. Ohtani also went 1 for 5 on opening day as a hitter. So this kid is like 24 years old. He's like the 2 or 3 time Japanese League MVP. He's like the Cy Young Award winner in that league, and like one of the best hitters and home run hitters also in his time there. So that's why he was dubbed the Japanese Babe Ruth. And what the Angels plan to do is they plan to DH him as many times as they can leading up to a start where he pitches. So for the first time in probably like at least a good 30 years, there's going to be a true 2-way player in the MLB. And, he's young, he's 24. So, he's definitely going to be able to do this for at least a season or 2. and before the Angels will probably make him buckle down and figure out which one he really wants to do. But are you intrigued to just kind of see what Shohei can do playing basically a whole season as a pitcher and a full-time hitter?
Absolutely. And, he was a much better pitcher than he was a hitter.
Right.
I was looking more of his pitching, and he's really, he struggled in spring training, but it showed when it was actually when it counts. His splitter was working, his fastball was on point, and he gave up a home run, but um, 6 strikeouts over 6 innings is impressive. Angels got the win, and I think the hits will come eventually. So just need to see more of Ohtani, and it's going to be very interesting to see how things move forward for this kid and the Halos.
Yeah, the Angels have had some, subpar starting pitching here the past couple of years has really kind of
And
been
that's
there.
putting it lightly.
Yeah,
That's putting it lightly.
that's been what's kind of been holding them back from being, more of a contender. With probably the best all around player in the game still with Mike Trout. Albert Pujols, has gotten over his foot issues, his plantar fasciitis issues, and he's playing as well as he can to be 40 years old. Compared to a few seasons ago where it looked like he was definitely done. So, the Angels are looking to maybe, sneak into a wild card as we all think Houston will, if they keep it up, injuries don't slow them down, will, win the division again. But the Angels definitely could be a player for a wild card berth and actually play in the wild card game this season if, health and their starting young pitching rounds into form.
Right. Agreed.
At this time, we want to let you guys know that Know the Score this week is being sponsored by the good folks at Amazon.com. Mother's Day is quickly arising. Guys, please don't get caught out there at the last minute. Support your favorite podcast and get something for your mom and your grandma, auntie, anybody who's that special to you for Mother's Day by going through www.cspn.us. Click on the menu tab, scroll down to support the podcast, click on that, then click on Amazon. Do your shopping, your Mother's Day shopping like you normally would, and some of your purchase comes back to the CSPN so we can help keep all of the podcasts free on the network each and every week. So fellas, get on the ball, do it early. Don't wait to the last minute. CSPN.us and Amazon.com. Do it today. Dwayne, we're going to wrap up this week's episode with a little bit of NBA talk. The Basketball Hall of Fame announced its newest class, and highlighting this year's class will be Grant Hill, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, and Ray Allen. So give me some thoughts on each one of those guys. And, they're all worthy of the Hall of Fame for sure. And, kind of Steve Nash, Grant Hill, and Jason Kidd going in together is kind of cool for me. And I'll elaborate on that after you, relive your memories of these guys.
Yeah, well, it's like when you grow up and you watch these guys as a kid, and it's now like it's when you see people you grew up watching getting into the Hall of Fame, you know that everything is changing. And Grant Hill, I mean, the things he did in college was amazing, and the things he was able to do before his injuries were amazing. I think had he not got injured, there might be more accolades for him. But the way he was able to reinvent his game after his injuries, to have a long career to make it Hall of Fame worthy even more is awesome. And Jason Kidd, I mean, he was Mr. Triple Double before Russell Westbrook and LeBron James before triple doubles became so easy to come by. he was the guy that was good in those triple doubles. And Steve Nash, I mean, he started his legend at Santa Clara with the 15 seed over the two. Um, and then Ray Allen, of course, one of the best sharpshooters in the game, a winner everywhere he's been pretty much. And, you know, with the Celtics, the big three before the fallout, the going to the Heat, winning a title there. So all these guys, very, very worthy and very, very great to see guys that I grew up with even more be in the Hall of Fame.
Right. Jason Kidd, Grant Hill, and Steve Nash are all linked together for me because I really got introduced to Jason Kidd and Steve Nash in the 1993 NCAA tournament in the West Regional where Duke was at, where Santa Clara upset the 2 seed, and then Jason Kidd and Cal beat Grant Hill, all in that same, regional right there. And that was my introduction to those two guys on the West Coast. Of course, I knew who Grant Hill was as a Carolina fan, the only true Duke player that I think we would say in our hearts that we really had respect for, and really, wanted him to be a good pro because, he wasn't like all the rest of the Duke players at that time, the Leitners and the Hurleys and, just the butthole Duke players that they had coming through at that time.
Christian Leitner.
Right. So, that was, quietly among Carolina fans, we all have respect for Grant Hill. Jason Kidd, like you said, as a guy who was known as the consummate, pass first, sets you up point guard. The joke was Ace Kidd when he first came into Dallas and his first probably 5-7 years in the league. But then, once he got to New Jersey and Eddie Jordan brought in the Princeton system and, he really started getting a jumper, set shot, and, he ended up his career as like one of the leaders in 3-point shots made. So, just a credit to him, always, redefining his game and elevating himself. Steve Nash saved basketball in the NBA. Him and Mike D'Antoni basically created the lovely game that we have today, because if you grew up in the late 90s and watched the New York Knicks and the Heat play playoff games and score 74 points against each other, you would be clawing your eyes out and saying that this is unwatchable basketball. What in the world happened to my lovely NBA? And Steve Nash and D'Antoni brought that back with Phoenix, getting the games up to over 100 points and, free-flowing three-pointers and, basically the Warriors and the Rockets and all of these teams that are out here high-flying and run up and down the court, they owe a lot to Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni. And then Ray Allen, of course, Jesus Shuttlesworth. What more can you say? Seattle Supersonics were one of my, fringe teams that I liked growing up, and he brought them back to prominence before they unfortunately had to move. And then, he went to the Bucks, and, still him and George Karl got there, and they, kind of rekindled what they had going on in Seattle before that got shut down. And then, he moved on to the Celtics, of course, and they made history there. Then he went on, like you said, to the Heat. And if it wasn't for, Ray Allen, LeBron would probably be like 1-7 in the finals, because he basically saved them on that 3-point shot there. He
sure did, because everybody in Miami was trying to get back into the American Airlines Arena.
Right. So, I got to see the pregame ritual of Ray Allen once. I was fortunate enough to watch this, and yes, he has to make 100 3-pointers. He basically plays like around the world with 2 guys rebounding for him until he makes 100, and then he stops. And it doesn't really take him that long. So it's one of the most surprising things you'll ever see in person, just to see the consistency of somebody's jump shot over and over and over from different places on the floor. So much deserved to these 4 gentlemen. And like you said, we grew up with them, their whole careers from college through their NBA runs. And, Jason Kidd's a coach now, and Steve Nash is a special assistant for the Golden State Warriors. And Grant Hill is doing, NBA TV and college basketball. And, Ray Allen's still, out here, just recently retired, but was still trying to play if somebody wanted to pick him up. So, it's just amazing to see, the span of the 20 years or so that we've had these guys been on national spotlight and where their careers have gone, but they all end up in the same place, the Hall of Fame. We'll talk about the Portland Trailblazers next, as they have quietly moved into the third seed in the West. I know 2 weeks ago we were talking about the New Orleans Pelicans, they had won like 9 in a row and had got all the way up to the 4th spot, but then they kind of fell back down to earth recently. But Portland was also hot at that same time, and they've continued their streak. So now, Dwayne, I want to bring you back in. Portland, 3 seed. Things hold serve. Was the way that the Warriors are going through these, they've got injuries and Steph's hurt and KD's just coming back and Klay Thompson's got a, returning from a broken thumb. Could Portland upset all the plans and beat the Warriors if it came down to those two teams in the Western Conference semifinals?
Health pending. If they're not healthy enough, I think they give them a good 7-game series, and I think Golden State will finally get it. I think Golden State pulls it off. The key will be Portland having to figure out how to win in Oakland, because, it's already tough to win in Oakland as it is, but to win in Oakland in the playoffs is going to be a very monumental task for a team like Portland. But I won't even say it's quiet. I think Portland's been a very consistent team all season long. They haven't had any really major bad stretches. Dame Lillard is playing lights out, CJ McCollum, and they have a lot of guys who know how to score, get the ball moving, and when it is Lillard time, Lillard is always on. But for Portland to be up in the 3rd spot, the West is so close and jumbled anyway. It doesn't surprise me that they're up here as well as they played, but there's still a lot of basketball left, and still they haven't even officially. I think they've officially clinched, but we don't know if they're going to be the 3rd seed or the 8th seed.
Yeah, seeding yet to be determined in the West. We'll break right into that. As we were talking about, it's really jumbled, and especially at the bottom, as we have Minnesota, New Orleans, Denver, and the Clippers all in contention for the last 2 spots in the West. Like we said 2 weeks ago, we thought New Orleans was going to definitely make it. Now they're fighting to stay in it. Minnesota is also fighting to stay in it, as I think a half game separates them and New Orleans. And then you've got Denver, who's been really playing good here the second half of the season. They've been a scrappy team. They've had some, really good wins, really good stretch of basketball. And then the Clippers, surprisingly, after they traded Blake Griffin and kind of overhauled their team, they've got a chance to make it into the 8th spot. So if you had to handicap it right now, I know we still got 12 more days until the playoffs start. Everybody has around 7 games to play. Which 2 teams would you think are going to be in good shape to secure the last 2 playoff spots in the West?
I would say Minnesota and Denver. For some reason, I just don't trust the Pelicans. I love Anthony Davis. I love what he's done all season, but the Nuggets are playing some pretty good basketball. I think they're the hottest team out of all of them. And don't even get me wrong. You got not only Minnesota. Minnesota's a half game behind Utah, and they're literally a game and a half behind San Antonio. So 4 through 10 is really, really separated by 4 games. So we talk about the last 2 spots, but we got to talk about 4, 5, and 6 because there's not that much separation there either. And I think, though, if we do talk about the last 2 spots, I say Minnesota, Denver, and New Orleans, and the Clippers are out.
Okay. It'd be fun to see Denver get in there. They haven't been there in a while. I always like to see new blood get into the playoffs. It always spices it up, even if they, make a first round exit, they'll at least give their home crowd a chance to see some playoff basketball, and they'll be excited, and they can maybe steal a game and extend it out longer than you think. So, hopefully Denver does make it in there. But of course, the Pelicans really need to make the playoffs because Anthony Davis is such a good player, and the country really needs to be able to, sit down and watch 4, 5, 6 games of him really, shine on a marquee level where they can gain that appreciation for him that I don't think a lot of people outside of New Orleans really truly have. So it'll be interesting. So keep an eye on the playoff race coming down the stretch here. And then our last bit of NBA news is the Warriors again suffer another injury, this time to backup swingman Patrick McCaw, as he suffered a lumbar spinal contusion after he got undercut inadvertently by Vince Carter when they played Sacramento over the weekend. Very, very, very scary situation. He had to get carted off the court on a stretcher. A lot of people were fearing that, the worst, like he may have a broken back, just a lot of speculation. But luckily, for Patrick McCaw, that wasn't the case. Just had a really bad bruise on his back and the spine. So just talk about the incident, Dwayne. When you first saw it, of course, Vince Carter didn't mean to do it. It just kind of looked like McCaw looked like he was going to go up to tap the boards, and he saw Vince coming, and Vince realized he wasn't going to be able to get there in time, so he stopped, and McCaw adjusted, and it just clipped his heels, and down he went.
It was a very scary fall. Vince Carter didn't mean to do anything. I think Steve Kerr's initial reaction, he thought it was an undercut, but I think knowing the guy Vince is, he knew that it wasn't inadvertent because he did give a word of encouragement because Vince felt horrible about it, and even Patrick McCaw said that he knew Vince didn't mean to do that. So I was just very glad that he's okay. He's in good spirits. He may be sore, but he's in good spirits. Thankful that it's nothing to the point where it's career threatening or anything of that sort. So it's just one of those basketball bang bang plays, and it was just a very awkward fall, but fortunately he's okay, and we'll see if he can make it back for the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. Like we said, this is the one thing the Warriors haven't really had to deal with in this great stretch of basketball they've had the last 4 years is, just the extended amount of injuries and injuries to key guys, coming into the playoffs. Steph got injured in the playoffs a couple of years ago when they lost to Cleveland, and he came back, and he's probably about 80% or so. And the longer the playoffs went, you could tell he wasn't quite right. But Durant had his injury last year, but that was a blessing in disguise because it kind of got Curry's mojo back, gave KD some rest, and he was the freshest man out there in the playoffs, and he just wrecked shop against Cleveland in the finals. But this year, they've got so many guys injured, and now they're getting, their bench players injured and guys who've been kind of playing a lot more minutes, getting more experience, valuable experience, I think, with the injuries to their main guys. But yeah, this is another guy that, provides outside shooting, provides defense that, they're definitely going to need in the playoffs. So hopefully he can get back and contribute in some form or shape or fashion before it's all said and done for the Warriors. So, Dwayne, at this time, I'm going to open it up to you for your final thoughts, shout outs, and thank yous.
All right. Final thoughts, shout outs to everybody listening. Thank you. I want to shout out my co-host as well, Jesse Nubias. I also want to shout out everybody at CSPN. Great shows that are going on right now. And so my final thought has to be the Philadelphia 76ers. We want to talk about teams that are quietly moving places. The Sixers are a half a game behind the Cavaliers for the third spot in the East, and half a game ahead of the Pacers for home court. And the East is pretty tight. The field's almost set for the most part. Miami and Milwaukee are trying to make sure they clinch within the next couple games, or with the Pistons lost, the East field will be set. Just the shuffling of the seedings will be in play. But the Sixers, though, they've won 10 straight. They have been playing really good basketball, and a lot of this is without Joel Embiid, who had an orbital fracture, and they may do some damage in the first round, and maybe in the second round if they play Toronto. But with the way Philadelphia's been rolling with these championships, a lot of people are eyeing the Sixers and maybe even the Flyers too for another title.
Yeah, the Philly would become the new Boston. They would just become obnoxious if they won that much so soon. So hopefully, we can kind of stave off some of this winning that they're going through right now. For my final thoughts and shout outs, I'd like to give a shout out to everybody, like you said, Dwayne here on CSPN. I'd like to give a shout out to you joining me this evening. Give a shout out to Jesse and Tobias, our other two co-hosts. I'd like to give a shout out also to the people who are excited about the Masters, because my final thought is going to be about golf this week. The Masters are coming in. It's the greatest golf tournament in the world. And Tiger Woods looks like his game is in contention. There are some rumors that he eagled the 2 par 5s on the back 9 in his practice rounds. So, with the way that he finished his last 2 tournaments, and the way that his body has held up so far this early golf season, everybody's really excited about seeing Tiger come into Augusta with his, best chance to win in probably the last, 7-8 times he's been there. And, if you can just get to the Saturday and be on the first part of the leaderboard and, be in contention on Sunday, it's going to be ratings. It's going to be, social media, and hopefully it'll be history, because I'd love to see Tiger Woods pull it off one more time, stir the echoes and then put on that green jacket and just remind everybody that, he's still probably the one guy that can get everybody around the TV. I don't know if LeBron has the drawing power that Tiger has, if Tiger's really got it going on and people think he can really do something. So hopefully Tiger Woods will be, having everybody tuned in to him on Sunday and, putting on another green jacket. So that'd be a great comeback story for him. Dwayne, anything else you want to add, man?
No, I'm good. I think I'm good. It's been another great episode. Thank you once again. And yeah, everything's good here.
All right. So for the Labor icon, Dwayne, I'm Don De Laurenti, and now you know the score.